Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tess DeBlanc-Knowles, Senior Director of the Atlantic Council's Technology Programs, or AC Tech as we say, and I'm really delighted to welcome you to today's discussion, AI Innovation and the Talent Gap, Competing at the Pace of Technological Change, which is part of our programming under our Geotech Commission on Artificial Intelligence. And so the Geotech Commission on AI brings together bipartisan congressional leaders, industry executives, and innovators across the AI ecosystem to ensure that the U.S. can maintain its leadership in a world that's increasingly defined by AI. The Commission is working to build a coherent, forward-leaning framework for understanding the geopolitics of AI, to identify those flashpoints and windows of opportunity, and to help the U.S. and our allies compete effectively and lead reliably in this AI future. So I'm honored to introduce one of the co-chairs of that Geotech Commission, Kemba Walden. As the president of Paladin Global Institute and former acting U.S. National Cyber Director, Kemba stands at the forefront of cybersecurity and national security, combining a wealth of government experience and private sector experience with a vision for a secure digital future. And we are incredibly grateful to have her leadership and her expertise on the Geotech Commission on AI. So with that, let me turn it over to Kemba for opening remarks.
Good afternoon. And thank you, Tess, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to the Atlantic Center's Geotech Center, to our hosts and our partners, and to everyone joining us in person and online. It's a privilege to open this public session of the Geotech Commission. As co-chair of the Commission, I begin by recognizing the extraordinary work this body is already doing. This Commission is bringing together bipartisan leaders, technologists, policymakers, and innovators to do something that too few institutions attempt to do, to understand where AI capabilities intersect with geopolitical leverage, and to translate that understanding into practical, actionable recommendations. Our mission is clear: strengthen U.S. and allied competitiveness, deepen technological and governance expertise, and help build institutions capable of adapting at the pace of technological change. That work is urgent, and it's why today's conversation on talent is so essential. I start with the simple premise, one that anchors this conversation. AI is built by people, not by headlines, not by hype, but by people. And the true competitive advantage for our nation is whether it can field the full workforce required to build, secure, deploy, and govern AI systems responsibly. What often gets lost in the public conversation is that AI talent is not monolithic. We don't just need more people to use AI. We need the right people doing the right work. Every layer of AI development requires distinct workforce with distinct skills, and we're facing shortages in every single one of those. Our competitive advantage depends on getting this part right. At the foundation are the people who shape data scientists, engineers, and stewards who ensure the integrity of training inputs, managing provenance, bias, contamination. Their work determines everything that follows. Roles that are failing, at the model layer, we rely on AI researchers, machine learning engineers, red teamers, and evaluators who can design, train, secure, and pressure test these systems. Their work is intensely technical, high stakes, and essential for safety. And as we move through the stack, infrastructure talent includes not only the cloud engineers and the data center operators, but also the electricians, the tradespeople, utility workers to keep the compute backbone running. They protect the hardware supply chains, secure hyperscale environments, and ensure we have the power, the chips, and the networks that modern AI demands. And on the application side, developers, designers, and security engineers translate capability into usable tools. They protect interfaces from prompt injection and API abuse. They guide safe agentic behavior and ensure the systems and people interact with are reliable and trustworthy. And wrapped around all of this are the governance roles, the policy experts, lawyers, risk managers, compliance officers, and international negotiators, those who write the rules of the road, enforce accountability, and align AI with universal values that respect human rights and fundamental freedoms at home and with allies. Every one of these groups contributes directly to national competitiveness, and every one of these talent pools is under-resourced. Entry paths are shrinking just as demand surges. Government has the mission advantage, but not always the hiring flexibilities to compete. Industry is racing ahead without enough people in evaluation, governance, and assurance, and meanwhile, strategic competitors are building and executing comprehensive talent strategies. So here's the through line I want to offer. We have an opportunity to close the talent gap by being more strategic. We must discover and fill the capability gaps along the AI tech stack. Closing them requires precision. We need to understand where the bottlenecks are, which roles we are failing to produce at scale, and which policy levers will move the needle fastest. There are steps we can take right now. We can modernize entry pathways to allow individuals with formal degrees to access AI roles in data, evaluation, and infrastructure. We can expand red teams and assurance training programs so safety isn't an afterthought. We can create mission-driven hiring routes for government, including faster clearances for technical talent. And none of this slows innovation. In fact, it's how we compete at speed, by making secure to market a competitive advantage and shifting more responsibility to the most capable actors to design systems that are safe by default. When we align people, processes, and technology around concrete outcomes, we make it costlier to attack systems than to defend them. And we earn the trust that unlocks real-world deployment. And as I kick off this afternoon's panel, I want to return to the lens that guides this commission's work. Talent is strategy. It is specific. It is layered. If we can map the gaps precisely, we can invest in the roles that matter most and build bridges between policy and practice. We won't just keep pace with technological change. We will set the pace. And thank you to the Atlantic Council for creating this forum. And I'm looking forward to hearing from the panelists on their strategies for building the AI workforce. Let's get specific and let's get practical. Let's leave with actions we can execute this quarter, because in AI, as in cybersecurity, strategy is what you can implement. Thank you.
Thank you, Kemba. And panelists, we have our marching orders. So I'm very delighted to be joined on stage with Chris Massey, founder of The Bird's Nest and a senior fellow at the Foundation for American Innovation, as well as Austin Carson, founder and CEO of Seed AI, and Garrett Bernstein, Chief AI Officer at Accenture Federal Services. So thank you all for joining us today. Thanks as well for everyone in the room and everyone online. I'll note now that we'll have some time for questions at the end, so if you want to submit those in writing, or also you can submit videos and audio, you can go to askac.org. For those in the room, we'll also have a microphone. So, I mean, Kemba provided a great kind of framework for our conversation today, and to me, these topics of innovation and talent are absolutely foundational when we talk about national and allied competitiveness in AI. And we're also having this conversation today as Davos kicks off with AI as the central topic. So let's kind of dive in on the stakes of this conversation. So why does this matter for America? Why is AI innovation important? And I think also, I'd tack on a question to that is, how can we communicate that beyond the policy community to regular Americans? Why should Americans care about AI innovation? Chris, could I start with you?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. I think the thing that I always kind of come back to with AI is it's not some niche technology. It's general purpose technology. It's going to touch every aspect of our lives. And I think the stakes are really high here because if we risk falling behind in getting involved in the policymaking, in providing levels of adoption and encouraging adoption, we really risk taking on somebody else's structure and buying, and basically having somebody import their regulatory structure that we have to adopt. And I think we're always better suited when we take a lead role. So I think that's one of the main things. On top of that, and I mentioned this earlier, and we had a meeting earlier, that there was a point where electricity stopped being a magic trick and it really infiltrated everything we do. We're at that inflection point already with AI. It's not something just to talk about as a big picture talking point. It's something that's going to be a part of our lives for pretty much good. So the more we get involved in understanding that, how it impacts our daily lives, how it impacts our professional career, our governments, and everything in between, I think the better suited we are.
Yeah, I'll add on there. Wait, is mine on? There we go. I'll add on there two things. The first is it's a multiplier. And so if we're thinking about kind of a renaissance of American local or small businesses, or even the large non-Magnificent Seven corporations, there's a real multiplication effect that if we don't take advantage of, we're going to fall behind, like geometrically and then exponentially. And then the second is it's a manifestation of our culture and our internet, frankly. There are different internets in the East and the West. We used to talk about it sometimes. And I do think that it's a real important factor that the predominant open source AI from China is the one that people really talk about. Now, domestically, people do use OpenAI's new open source thing, but having the ability to project kind of the values and concepts that we hold dear, as people say, matters a lot more than I think people give it credit for.
Absolutely. Garrett, do you want to add to that?
Sure. And thank you for having me, obviously. I'll just add, I think, good points from my colleagues here. You should care if you care about the state of the economy, or if you care about the state of healthcare or transportation, or basically anything, because it is very likely going to, if you're not a part of shaping how it does that as a citizen, or working in government or working in industry, it's going to be shaping that anyway. And I think sort of technology has to work within the bounds of like our society and what matters to us. And so the democratic process and engagement in how these technologies will change our economy, will change the world and our place in the world. You should care about that. I think most Americans do care about it, especially in the last couple of years as they've seen just how quickly it's changing the economy and the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we think about the talent question, I know that this is it's a hard space to really quantify, and Kemba really laid it out, where the talent problem or even opportunity AI is really complex with the different skill sets you need at kind of different places in that stack of AI or in any sector you are in. But from each of your perspectives, maybe at that kind of more macro level, when it comes to talent, where does America stand vis-a-vis the rest of the globe in the competition for AI talent? And is there anything that worries you about staying ahead if we think about talent as part of this kind of innovation ecosystem? Garrett?
Yeah, it's such a complicated layer of talent, so it's probably, I won't try to go through all of the various pieces. I think in terms of the most sort of cutting edge innovation and at the sort of model layer, I do think we still have a very strong position. We have the most advanced companies in this space, spending the most money, coming out with the breakthroughs at an enormous rate. But that's not to say that our position is unimpeachable, which I think it is not. The rest of the world understands that this is important. They have incredible academic institutions. They're investing a lot of money in education, and they're willing at the state level in some of these countries to truly invest enormous funds to catch up. So I think we're in a, you never want to be the one saying, oh, we're doing great, like nothing to change. Like obviously we have a lot to do, but I think we should step back and, take a second to say like we do have an incredible ecosystem here of startups, of researchers, and now it's about doubling down on that and, trying to increase our lead.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I guess there's a few layers.
Yeah, there's a lot of
But,
pieces to
you
it.
know, if we're going to break it down maybe, right, there's like the top layer, which is folks that can lead an AI research team, the folks that can lead one of the teams at Google, Facebook, whatever, in a startup. That's like 150 people in the
Yeah,
world.
there's not many.
It's like 150 in the whole world,
Yeah.
right? That's pretty crazy. And then if you go to people that could be in those teams, that's like 90,000 people in the whole world. Also pretty crazy. But I think something that we need to focus our attention on, because if I've learned anything from the code, CS for all movement before, it's like trying to jam people into that place of, okay, you should be one of the 90,000 or one of the 200. You should. I would love to see all Americans be part of something like that. The flip is that the talent that I'm really focused upon is the talent we need to diffuse the technology, and that's both people that can help diffuse, and we're working on some stuff I'll get into a little bit later related to this, but it's also the folks that can facilitate that even below the actual service providers. So like, who is it that in each community can be a person that can answer the phone, or that can go and be part of the economic development organization, or be part of a local governance structure that can say, I'm here to help you make your business work better by using this technology, and to work in all the fun, weird things that are unique to our area or to your industry and help you figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that, and I think we are well positioned to be the leader, given our academic institutions and research and our funding that we provide for that. The investment that's going into a broad sector of technology and innovation. But my biggest concern is complacency, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, if we're going to make assumptions around our leadership role, then we're never really going to continue to lean into that leadership and to do what Austin is suggesting, which it should be infiltrating pretty much every part of our society, but in a positive way. Guardrails are necessary, and innovation is also necessary, so they have to work collaboratively in balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Austin, you with your organization Seed AI, you're going out across the country, you're engaging with the different parts of the country that aren't yet fully involved in this AI future. As you're going out and interacting with these communities, and you're thinking about talent, you're thinking about growing innovation ecosystems, are there kind of common models across the country that we can use, or do they really need to be kind of specifically tailored and built for a region specifically?
Well, before I'm overly confident in my answer, I'd like to state that we're still figuring this out in some ways. But as we go to different places and different levels of intensity, so for a few different examples, we, on one hand, work with Tulsa in the state of Oklahoma on their tech hub, which is formed around how do we take the unique characteristics and ambitions of Tulsa and then build technology and processes around those so that we can realize kind of our hopes. There's a second, which is in a number of different places. We've worked with community colleges or other like K through 12, K through 16 educational institutions, or pods of them, to do something that is more like literacy, right? Or do something that's more like early level kind of education experimentation. Those are more one-off, but it's still increasingly like you give people a fun problem, you facilitate them addressing that problem, you explain and have folks themselves talk about their relationship and experience with the problem, and then you figure out what the commonalities are. Now you take that up to an even bigger scale, like we just did with the state of Utah, where we made a day in their AI summit where we had a ton of local business leaders come together. We put them in intentionally designed groups and working roundtables with, again, working on some hypotheses of, okay, we believe these folks probably play this role, and these people probably play this role. And here's the economic development, and here's the other companies, and here's the trades, like all these little pieces. And then you see how they interact. And we are seeing that they're interacting in an, I wouldn't say like a fully predictable manner, but there is certainly some archetypal or like kind of structural similarities. And we'll keep sussing that out. But there is a core aspect, as you point out, which is talking to the community of people there and understanding the people in the community and doing what is frankly a fairly labor-intensive ground game process that I don't think any company, I mean, the reason we do this is because it's kind of not any company's job or a reasonable expenditure of their resources to go try to figure out a community that's not gonna spend a lot of money. Like, we're focusing on people that have like $25,000 to $250,000 to spend for their business. That's below range for any consultancy or agency that's gonna help you figure it out. So on one hand, I think it really is just coming in and saying, we know that y'all would like to self-determine, and being invited to come in the first place. So I don't know, it's like maybe a little like fuzzy and woo and touchy-feely, but it's like the conscientiousness in being invited is quite important, and really, really caring about their experience is quite important. So as like a basic maxim, if you want to learn one thing from it, like, well, I'll get into that later, but if you want to learn one thing about it, it's just coming in, caring about the people, and asking them what they want. And there are structural templates I can give you later, but that's the core and heart of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful point, and I think sometimes gets lost in policy conversations in DC too. Like, you know, I think really helpful that CDA is doing this work and bringing it to policy conversations. So maybe coming at it from that kind of federal, you know, 20,000-foot layer, Chris, you spend time at the Federation for American Innovation and other organizations like that, CDAI and others, are advocating for policies meant to strengthen American AI innovation, these talent pipelines. So from your perspective, what are some of those key policies that you really think that folks should be focusing on in the near term, maybe kind of early 2026, the rest of this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to just create the distinction that it's not a race with a clear race with a clear finish line, number one. But more importantly, I think it's clarity. So without and I'm not going to speak for FAI specifically, I'm just speak for myself. The idea that you could potentially have an increase in state legislative efforts from last year around AI is kind of nuts. I mean, there was over 1,000 bills across multiple states or across all 99 state legislatures. Kudos if you can name the one that's unicameral. And without having some level of federal preemption, I do think it creates a lack of clarity and kind of a wild, wild west. And really what we're at, the point I think we're at is moving from the Wild West to city planning. Like, we need to be in a real concerted effort to have a clear set of guidelines for how to operate from a broad perspective and what's acceptable from a hyper local perspective. And by local, I mean, you know, the specific sector you're in. So how AI is useful in financial services, in broader regulatory environments. That can be done based on existing rulemaking with some level of acknowledgement that there has to be some human element to the AI.
And I'll say an easy one that I know you'll like. Fully fund and build out the National AI Research Resource. We need it. It's connective tissue. It's something that should be enabling this activity everywhere. If you can't experiment, if you can't build, you can't self-determine. You only understand reality and what's necessary when you encounter it kinetically.
True.
Yeah. And that gets to the role of the federal government in funding the research environment. And so I'm interested in your takes, maybe all of you from your different perspectives. You know, is the federal government funding the right areas of AI research? Is it doing it in the right ways? Does anything need to change about that kind of traditional innovation cycle that we've relied on since World War II to make sure that the U.S. is a technical leader on the world stage?
Yeah, I think there's, again, a couple pieces to this. There's obviously the research investment, which I'll kind of let you guys talk about. I'll talk a little bit about my view on like implementation, how they're investing in implementation. I think this technology was so sort of novel for a long time in government that basically how they funded it, and some of this I did when I was at the State Department or the Defense Department, was they funded it almost as its own line item. So they'd say, we need AI, so we'll have a center for AI. And that was valuable, and we delivered some innovation. The future is going to be, we don't need a separate program element for this in the budget. Every program must use this. And that turns the onus from, we have this one simple team that's just, they're the AI team, we have an AI team, go to them. It needs to be required basically of every program. And that is how you'll get to scale. There's no other way to get to scale, honestly, because you're never gonna, you have to shift the onus sort of programmatically and budget-wise from one center of excellence to everyone else. And so I think that's the shift that we need. Those central teams can take on certain parts of the AI lifecycle that make sense to do centrally, things like managing compute and large cloud environments, which you don't want 100 people to do on their own. It's good to buy that sort of centrally. Economies of scale and all of the management challenges associated with it. But other parts of AI, putting it into general workflows, into software, these agencies need to start doing that everywhere. And that, I think, will be the shift that will allow us to get to scale.
Yeah, I don't want to sing too much from the hymnal, but I couldn't agree more. I think the big aspect is federal government should be funding research and creating opportunities for innovation, but they also are an incredible signal and provide like real viability to a broad sector of solutions. And frankly, they should be one of the biggest customers of any different aspect of AI.
Yeah. Austin, do you want to add to that?
I'll just say fully agree, frankly. I do think that there's, the more that we can focus on all angles where we have the jurisdiction or the wherewithal or the right to do good experimentation, responsible experimentation about implementation, and then provide information back to the rest of the country that can help guide. I think we've had plenty of back and forth about the NIST risk management framework, but I would love to see, the OMB AI adoption framework,
Yeah. And then, as always, I'm kind of a Jennifer Polka nerd. I'm sure a lot of people. Everyone, right? So easy position to take. But to her point, and many others who've worked in government, and then the proof is in the pudding. Then you must deliver programs. You must execute, and that is the hardest part. It is much harder, as someone who's worked both at an agency and run programs and at the White House writing policy. I've done both of those things. The policy is much easier. It is much, much easier because you're basically just writing a piece of paper. And that's not easy. It's still hard. But once that paper gets turned into acquisitions and talent, we're talking about people and hiring, that all is significantly more grind to get done in an agency. And so I think the more focus on execution in agencies and holding people accountable to that execution, that is the way.
Yeah. And we're getting into the part of this kind of innovation that is adoption, right? And that really hard work to integrate AI into an organization, be it the federal government or name your sector. And it's something that I think often gets lost in the policy conversations when we talk about innovation. We talk about leading on the best models. We talk about having the best researchers. But to really benefit from AI, that adoption piece has to be front and center as well. And so, Garrett, you're doing a lot of this work now at Accenture Federal Services, working across kind of defense, civilian agencies. Where are you seeing some of the momentum around AI adoption?
Yeah. It is pretty widely, I think adoption is increasing. I would say the places, I'm not going to call out any specific teams, obviously, but the places where I'm seeing the most progress in the shortest order are places that have really spent the last few years, or even now, just getting their data right. And so, that is that sort of very hard, gritty churn work. And most of it, candidly, is not work that can be done by consultants and by vendors. It is the government has to do the hard work to say, we're going to create an internal framework by which we allow each other to share data. And we're going to do that hard work to get that data from that. In the Department of Defense, there were some systems that were from the 1950s. And there's no API for that. We're driving to the place where, and we're getting disks out of, a mainframe, right? And so you have to do that foundational work. And the places that have invested in that are the ones who are now really having progress, because they're like, hey, we've done a lot of this hard sort of foundational stuff. And now the tools have gotten so much better that you don't actually need a ton of, data scientists, in there writing code anymore. You can just put really good modern software on top of that, and then it becomes about who can come up with the most useful way to stitch that together and deliver an outcome. So, there's pockets of excellence all over government, but I would say the offices that are, when I talk with them and I'm like, these people are serious about making progress, it's the ones that are willing to move fast and take some risk, and it's the places that have done the hard work to get their data ready.
Yeah, I'll tag on and say find the same thing in pretty much all sizes of corporate adoption as we've talked to folks around the country. Like, as we were going in to do this event in Utah, there was a certain movement that was like, well, I don't know, why are we going to do complicated 30 and 60 and 90-day implementation plans? We could just have them vibe code together a solution right now and teach them ChatGPT tips. I'm like, well, you could. You know what I mean? Like, that would actually be better than the null scenario, certainly. But if you're going to do something serious, it is about understanding access controls and getting the data together, regardless if it's a butcher shop or if it's like a major technology provider in some other way. And I think that that's a little bit overlooked, that those are standard. Talking about can you standardize things, that's a standard problem that at different scales has kind of known train tracks that you need to follow. But you can't avoid it if you want to do something real.
You also can't create a scenario where, federal employees, government employees overall are confused or skeptical about technology because they're discouraged from using it from a professional perspective, but not discouraged from using it from a commercial perspective, but they're not really, or a consumer perspective, but the lines don't cross there. They kind of tend to fall into one place. And I know this because I'm married to a federal employee. So I see that firsthand. And you're never really going to move on the adoption side until you get comfortable with what it is and how it can be helpful. Like we used to do, look, Lyft was a Hack Week project inside of another company. Some of the things you've been talking about are effectively a way to supercharge the potential for hacking together or vibing together potential solutions. That needs to be encouraged, not discouraged.
And I was actually kind of blown away. I was talking to a staffer who's an AI staffer who I was mentioning, since November, things have changed fairly dramatically. Here's some new things. Are you playing with these? And he's like, we're not allowed to.
Yeah. And
I was like, what? Like outside of work, you're not allowed to? And he's like, well, I work late hours.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I get it, but if you don't, okay.
Well, this was the same issue with crypto, right? Like you had, federal employees that weren't allowed to hold any of it.
Degen stuff in Portugal. I know you were there, Chris.
Yeah, no, I wasn't anywhere near it. Don't tell anybody. But how can you reasonably regulate something that you have no experience in?
Right. And this gets to the talent piece around adoption as well, and these kind of baseline literacy and comfort with the tools that are fast evolving and coming at them. So from your kind of different perspectives of the environment, as we think through this kind of big picture talent piece, be it in government or in industry or in communities, how should we be thinking about upskilling and reskilling the population so that they do feel comfortable with the tools in order to experiment with them or to be open as their companies start to integrate AI into operations? I don't know if you have lessons learned from the federal government.
Yeah, I'll talk
Garrett.
a little bit about federal, I guess. I think a couple things. There is a disconnect often in federal where the person buying is not the person using, almost ever. And so you can say as much as you want that you're going to have forward deployed engineers, close to the mission as possible, and we do, and a lot of places do. So I don't think it's made up. It's just you have to be able to both show results for users, and you have to get the buyer to say that they're willing to buy, and those are not always the same. I wish we could sell, like every employee in the federal government had a credit card with $1,000 or something. I'm just coming up with this idea. Actually, this would be incredible.
I'm like, that
because
crazy.
Yeah, because then you would let them choose the software that they want, like any commercial, any commercial company. And if you built the best software, you would just make the most money. Anyway, that would be let's see what the congressional staffers say about that idea if it ever gets to them, but probably wouldn't like that from an oversight standpoint. Regardless, I think if you want to drive adoption, you do have to talk to, you have to be able to talk to both, sort of the broader point of me bringing this up. You have to talk to the users and make sure that they feel like this is actually solving my problem, this is changing, I used to do this for 20 years and it took me forever, now it takes me a day or it takes me an hour or a minute. You have to find that, and then you have to be able to translate that to whoever is doing the acquisition, and they're almost never the same. But having the skills to do both is what you have to have. And then you have to have acquisition people and leaders, business leaders in government, who are willing to say, yeah, those testimonials actually really matter to me. They really are important, and I'm willing to be creative from an acquisition standpoint to figure this out, to get the best technology. And more of that is happening. In the last year in particular, there's been a ton of focus on doing these more commercial, buying commercial and all that stuff, which I think is for the good.
Yeah, I'll give you, just maybe two things. The first is, as I listen to you describe this almost as like a process and a set of responsibilities, the big revelation is this is complicated and effortful, right? Like there's a dream that AI will be self-adopting and that at a certain juncture we'll be able to be like, I don't know, AI, go fix my finances. I mean, I just even tried to unleash Claude Code at parts of my like certain documents that I had, and some of it that I did intentionally worked, but when I was just like, also, if you just go read this, is there anything you could think to do? And it's like a bunch of stuff. I'm like, well, that seems hazardous. I probably shouldn't just say do those things, But in all seriousness, there's one thing where like if I didn't have, even in an organization that is around AI fundamentally, if I was not so bought in and did not spend like an almost irresponsible amount of my own time playing with the tools and trying to use them for things, it wouldn't work. And in fact, at times in the organization before I had kind of like the time and the much better managed stress in my life, I wouldn't, and I would try to compel other people to do it. And they're like, I don't know, well, here's some crap. I didn't care. And so eventually I just realized I had to spend a bunch of my extra time getting into it. It was fun and interesting, and now we play a game internally called Make Austin Feel Old. It's like whoever makes me feel old for enough consecutive weeks wins a mystery prize. I haven't decided what it is yet, but I am good about prizes, so it will be. And I think that it really comes down to that, though, right? Can you play games about it?
You have to create a culture about it, I think.
And it has to be fun, frankly. Like at least a little bit. Your $1,000 card idea, I find kind of compelling. I mean, on one hand, it's funny, but on the other hand,
well, if you had it on a blockchain, then we would know.
And that's the rational.
There'd be no corruption.
Way to do it. Somewhere like UBI. It's our new UBI. Learn how to be good at AI. But I do think that experimentation, the play, and the leadership is all more important and effortful than one imagines. And if you don't do it, you shouldn't expect to succeed.
There's a phenomenon in the private sector, especially as you sort of unleash your employees on being more creative in how they operate and how they do their jobs, which is like at some point, someone in your company, whether it's a small business or a large one, is going to be a primary AI translator between what your sector is and what's possible for innovation. I think the more that we lean into providing some resources for companies to experiment a little bit and get their hands dirty, inevitably somebody sees how efficient one of their colleagues is because they are the AI translator, and other people want to create the same efficiencies for themselves, and you start seeing an opportunity for AI to more easily kind of permeate throughout the organization. I think that's going to be the big factor as it translates into other areas like academia and to the public sector overall.
And when we're talking about talent, when we look at it kind of from the national level, we can't really talk about AI talent without talking about the role that foreign talent plays in our innovation ecosystem, from researchers in academia to startups to engineers who are staffing some of our leading companies. So maybe I'll turn to you, Chris, for this one first, and others can jump in. But how do we manage wanting to attract the best and brightest from across the world to contribute to this American innovation ecosystem with concerns around research security or IP protection?
I think well, the first thing is to attract them, right? Like I think we have an attractive ecosystem overall. And I guess my take on this is whether they are building here or someplace else, they're going to build regardless. And I'd much rather have them have the opportunity to build and cultivate whatever the innovation is that they're building here in the United States, grow our economic development resources, and move from that perspective. But I'd love to hear what you guys think.
I mean, as a purely domestic organization, Seed AI is about AI in America and about kind of helping the like fractal beauty of the country flourish here using the technology. I do think that a lot of that fractal beauty is part of the melting pot, and I think anybody that wants to come to the United States and be an American and build a life here and build technology here and further the economy and push the world forward, that's a good thing, and I think that's something we should celebrate. And if we fail to do so, we will deeply regret it. If you have not read some of the major AI papers, if you have not observed some of the major CEOs of AI companies, you should, because you will notice there's not a lot of Matthew Johnsons in there, and maybe they're, for the folks that are like, yeah, but we need Americans doing these jobs. First of all, a lot of those people are already Americans. Second of all, if we don't seriously approach this talent question and view it as like a team exercise with the folks that are already in it and the folks that would like to be, they ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
I would just frame it as it is a national security issue.
He's the smarter one on this panel.
We must have the best people to win in whatever we're doing. And that means building opportunities for everyone here for that. And then it means also having opportunities for people to come here as well. It's not zero sum. We just need to have the best people.
Yeah.
If I could tag something on, like if we don't have confidence in our security apparatus to be able to suss out people that are security concerned, then that's an embarrassing problem that we have, frankly. Like this is not an either or question. It's the concern is IP protection. If this concern is security, saying like, yeah, but none of those people is definitely not the answer. And again, it's kind of embarrassing from like a display of skill perspective.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I do think to Garrett's point, it's a both and, right? We need to be all in on the talent strategy. So maybe I'll close with one last question for the panel and then open it up for questions from the room, and we've gotten a couple online as well. So maybe kind of a lightning round to each of you. What's one thing happening right now in AI talent innovation that you don't think is getting enough attention, but is gonna be critically important in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
I think it's the development of AI translators across the board.
Yeah.
Lightning round.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Right now in AI innovation, I think it is kind of the upswell of like normal businesses and them thinking about it as not just a proxy, but an important lever in all the bigger questions. Like if we don't understand what's happening in real life, day-to-day stuff, it doesn't matter what our national strategy is.
I would say in federal, again, there was sort of recently announced Tech Force. Basically, my assessment is you just must have more technologists in government. I've done a couple stints in government, found it incredibly rewarding, challenging, but very rewarding. And you just must have people with the skills in government if you want to run these programs. And the size of some of these programs and the impact of them is just enormous. It's just a thing, there's no other healthcare system as big. There's no other defense department in the world, obviously, as big. So if you want to have that impact, I think and you're in the right position in your career, I would encourage people to do that and have that experience.
Yeah, that's a great point. And maybe one other kind of lightning round is we've talked a lot about some of the challenges for both companies, the nation, for government workforce. What maybe from each of you is one that's really solvable right now with political will and resources and where we could see rapid progress if we make the decision?
Yeah, I'll say we already have the people to do like make America AI ready. They're there, they're very interested. We find them as we go around and make phone calls in different states. There just needs to be the connective tissue and the facilitation. So I think it's easy to say there's not the workforce, we can't do it. It's like only if you're looking at small parts of the workforce.
I think this is I'm sort of cheating. I'm duplicating my answer from a second ago. I think that they can really accelerate the pace with which people get into government. It is really a bureaucratic issue, and I think there's bipartisan support for it, whether it's background checks, whether it's just pure policy process. I think people understand that it cannot be a flash, in a bipartisan way, it cannot be a flash to bang to join government in 18 months. It just can't. If you want really, really good technical talent, it has to be faster.
So I think from my perspective, this is not easily solvable, but it's regulatory clarity. But I think the easier part of it is to bifurcate what's easy and what's not, and spend a little bit of time figuring out what we can do quickly from a broad federal perspective, and then spend a lot more time on some of the harder parts, like education. That's a harder one. Child safety is something we should lean into. But there are aspects of, I think, industry-specific regulatory clarity that we can kind of have now.
Yeah, I think convening people and just having those conversations would be quite effective if you could make them feel like it was reasonable and responsible to be part of that convening.
We should work on that.
I would be happy to. That sounds fun.
Okay, great. We're going to open up for raise your hand if you have a question in the room. We'll bring the microphone. We also have a couple that have come in online. So let's go ahead to, you can see up here one of the questions we've gotten online, which is that we often talk about the supply side of AI talent. And my question is on the demand side. Are companies prepared to look beyond elite universities and networks when they're hiring? If anyone has thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think they are. I think the more we see movement away from the coasts and adoption and integration at the sort of the bigger land-grant universities, I was talking earlier about this, are adopting incubation and investing. I think from that perspective, you're going to start seeing a wider aperture of talent.
Yeah, you're going to always run into elitism, unfortunately, on one hand. On the other hand, this does have some of the beauty of like cybersecurity and coding in that your skill is what matters. I have hired people over people that go to MIT and Yale that went to a random state school and could show me something on multiple occasions, and I don't even have that big of a team. And so I think that there's something that is like, if you're trying to be the head of an AI research team, you're probably going to have to go to MIT or CMU or Stanford. That's probably necessary. There is still an option to become God level on Reddit, and you might still be able to do that if you spend enough time doing it. I'm not going to say that's 0%.
It would be for me. It's 0%.
Dude,
yes.
you say it. Look, I am telling you, this is a time where like time and curiosity
I don't have time.
will pay. Hey, you could sleep less. I know you sleep 9 hours a night. It's too much. No, but in all seriousness, like my running theory is like a 16-year, if a saving the world thing is like, I'm a little hesitant to even raise that as a paradigm, but let's just say that's the paradigm, saving the world or whatever. 16-year-old's going to be one of the major people involved, like period.
Yeah. I definitely, I would say I look at an enormous number of resumes all the time. So what I would say is if you do not have an elite degree, that, like a lot of people don't, vast majority of people don't, for what it's worth. But things that I look for, I actually will go to your GitHub. Like if it's at the top of your resume, you think I'm not looking at it, I am 100%, that's the first thing I look at, actually. Sometimes I look for certifications also, and like legit certifications, the hard ones. But if I see a GitHub account that has a bunch of commits to open projects and stuff, I'm like, this person's building something. Like, it's hard. It's hard to build stuff. It's not easy. Easier now, I guess, with vibe coding and stuff, but it still takes time. And so people who have demonstrated that they have built stuff is always better. Now, it's worth saying, people from elite universities also build stuff and have active GitHubs and stuff. So it's a competitive market out there. I'm not, gonna sugarcoat it. But building stuff and demonstrating that you've built things, it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question in the room here, and I'll mention for folks online again, that's askac.org if you want to submit a question online.
Thank you for your time. So my question is, given people's... Oh, of course, yes. Thank you. My name is Nikolai Cronin. I'm from the RAND Corporation. So given people's tendencies to overtrust AI, especially with coming results from ChatGPT, what are the best methods you would say to train AI translators and tech experts on how to avoid cases of negligence? And would this be regulatable? Thank you.
Well, you could always make the process regulatable if you wanted to, but I think that mostly it's like you have a don't be a jackass class inside of the office where you're like, look at, there's the classic stupid things where They're like, look at the lawyer that did a dumb thing. That was ChatGPT, that was 3.5. That was a long time ago. We need new examples of stupidity. But I really think that, I don't know, I'm really itchy to say that we should regulate and say that there has to be a internal class to learn to not do this. Like, this seems like, again, the consequences will yield themselves quickly enough. If you're talking about like a pro-social or anti-social thing at scale where something weird happens on like persuasion or human behavior, that's maybe a different, more policy relevant question. But I do think having an AI translator, like, this is a conversation we actively have inside. We just processed 650,000 words of transcript from this event. We had multiple levels of check around it. Like multiple levels just in LLMs before we, like multiple systems until we sent it to people. We sent it to all of our facilitators to check. I spot checked it, one of my guys spot checked it. We'll check it again before it goes out, in part because the work itself is like serious. Now, getting disbarred is also serious, so you'd think people would learn from that, but.
I would say you have to understand the full chain of the decision-making process to be able to assess the risk. So I spent a bunch of years at the State Department, so let me TLDR, how the State Department works. Someone gets a piece of information from the news or whatever, they write it in a cable. Let's say it's a really important cable and it's going to go to the Secretary of State. Rough guess how many humans have looked at that before it goes to the Secretary of State. I'm making this number up, but probably 100. Yeah. Probably 100 different people have looked at it and reviewed it. So if you used an LLM to help do some of the base research on that, or even do some editing on that, like the decision-making process, you get my point. It matters. There's a lot of humans in the loop. If we're using an LLM to make like a really, really important health outcome decision or a targeting decision, like that chain of decision makers should be really carefully looked at, right? So, my point is there are shades of gray in this process. If it's like your daily report, up in a very low, low risk threshold, no, we don't, we have some checks, common sense. If you're making an incredibly important national decision, yes, the process matters, and that process is probably highly regulated and watched by humans.
Yeah, I'll tag one thing, which is I think it's important to set expectations as you're trying to work on adoption. Like, I think maybe it was Simon Williamson or Ethan Klein or somebody that was Ethan Klein, whatever other Ethan. Anyways, doesn't matter, but not Ethan Klein. But one of the main things, God, it's going to kill me. I'm going to let this go. Anyways, major commentary. It's going to kill me. Ethan Mollick, thank you.
Yeah.
But it written like, okay, if you can expect AI to save you 8 hours, you can expect to spend an hour double checking what it does. And so I think being able to, but it's like you still save 7 hours, but you need to set the expectation that like, hey, it would have taken you 2 hours to write this report. I expect it to take you 30 minutes, and I expect 20 minutes of that to be you checking what came out of it.
Yeah, I think the big issue is you've got to get people to understand that utilizing AI does not absolve you from any responsibility for what you're asking it to produce. Which goes back to, if you're in a financial institution or a fintech or something like that, you got to go through a certain number of hours of training. You got to go through all that. That still applies to you.
Mm. Yeah.
You're not being like, oh, AI made this decision, so I'm fine. Yeah. No, you made this
For
decision.
what it's worth, my experience in the federal government is generally that argument is used to stop any usage of LLMs. Yeah. Just full transparency. Yeah. Like, it could make a mistake. It's like, well, I've seen State Department interns.
Yeah, I know.
Like, they make some mistakes, We got hundreds of them, and they're writing stuff that's going up the chain through the cable system. So, it depends. The context matters, right? But it shouldn't be used to halt adoption, which generally it is in a lot of cases. Not always, but in a lot of cases, it's used to halt adoption.
Thanks. Another question in the room here.
I'll stand up. Okay, I have a two-part question, if you don't mind.
And if
I'll
you could
start
say your name. and
Jennifer
association.
O'Maycam, Leidos. So for my first question, when you say AI talent gap, how much of that is actually non-technical product policy, program management?
Like 90%. So like, I'm not exaggerating, like probably 90%.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We find it to be so process and people heavy. The technology itself is more like jigsaw puzzle.
Okay. And then if someone isn't coding, what are 2 to 3 highest leverage roles you're seeing orgs hire to successfully deploy AI?
I mean, I think it's, again, like more like a management thing almost, right? Like, or there's like internal change agents, anybody that's ever done technology modernization. So it's almost like project management, maybe. It's the easiest way to think about it. Understand your people, processes, where your data is, what your existing regulatory structure is. That's all individual lines of effort. And then having somebody that can then be like a technical project manager. So like a lot of these companies have somebody that's not an engineer that manages like 30 engineers just to try to make them do work in order reasonably and not just like at night do like 50,000 lines of code in a manic frenzy. So I think that is still, like, you can look across companies and ask, like, what are all of the non-technical folks that are clustered around the engineers? And then in every business, those people will have to start existing around like the one engineer or the multiple people that are implementing technology. So it's more traditional project management skill sets, ironically.
User experience and design, I think, too, is a big, like, you know, I used to work with design teams that you'd give them some ideas and it'd be like 2 weeks before you'd get something back. Not an insult to these teams. Design took a lot of time and a lot of work. You can do it much, much faster now. And so rapid design and prototyping can really, you know, if you're not a coder, can be really valuable.
Yeah,
Well, and I'll tag on the one thing, which is, if you're a project or product manager or technical manager and you currently don't have anything where you've managed implementation or adoption of AI, you need to make up a practice problem for yourself. Like, there need to be games and exercises that effectively take you without that skill and then teach you the novel issues that are related to it.
Yeah, or utilize former problems and sort of red team them utilizing AI. I mean, you're going to see a lot of companies that are supercharged with their knowledge management across functional areas. That's really a key, like, potential growth role.
Wow. Is it okay if I ask one more question?
Go ahead.
So with that being said, what's the biggest failure mode you've seen with teams treating AI adoption as a purely technical problem? And where can you see non-technical leaders filling in that gap?
It is just people assuming that it's a technical thing that's already been figured out for them and now they're just supposed to use it. Like, that's the number one, comes down on high from whatever executive group, and they're like, here, it's our internal chatbot, just bah. And I think that's where it goes sideways, where you need to have people to explain what the workflow is and to help people integrate it into the projects and all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to just general adoption, right? Like, you know, the more we can equate this to the average everyday American and how they live their life, you know, if your grandmother can come to Thanksgiving and explain to you how she's using AI, that's sort of the ideal outcome because it takes the technical out of it.
Well, with that, let me thank all of our panelists for your insights today. We've kind of ranged from the big strategic level of innovation and talent to the organizational level to the personal level. So thank you for the really insightful comments, for joining us. Thanks to everyone for coming that came in the room and who have joined us online. We'll be doing a series of events around our Geotech Commission on AI, so stay tuned for more events like this in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us so much.